Welcome to In the News with Double O Des. I'm Des Bernardo, giving you my perspective on news from South Africa and the rest of the world.
In the news this morning is a story that you will all probably find fascinating, and this is on Zweli Mkhize that's made a call on the opposition parties to actually work with him in unity as we are bracing for the COVID-19 storm. And he was met by what he calls mutiny from them. So the headline to the article says Mkhize's call for unity is met with mutiny from opposition parties as COVID-19 storm approaches. Now it's interesting, as the opposition parties see that the public sentiment has changed, their sentiment also changes towards what's happening, which means they never had your best interests at heart. They couldn't care less about what you actually need and less about leadership, because what they are doing is just following the trend. And based on how the public is changing how they feel, the opposition parties are adapting their strategy to get more votes, because it's all they can think about is keeping their seats so that they can keep their cushy salaries. And as we go through this article, this will become abundantly clear. And as you know, in combating the New World Order, one of the main things that I'm advocating for is a direct election system where we elect our leaders directly. In other words, all of these people that are hiding behind their parties who have chosen them to be our representatives, because we didn't choose them, remember, that we get rid of that system once and for all and actually be able to elect our leaders directly and hold them directly accountable for all the nonsense they catch on while they're in government. Because this is all they've been doing all this time. It's, I quote here, "We dare not be divided." This is Health Minister Zweli Mkhize. And I close the quote, and he said, that's what he said, and he warned of the arrival of the COVID-19 storm. He delivered a ministerial statement to a virtual sitting of the National Assembly. So this means it's all the people in Parliament, it's a lot of people, sitting in a virtual meeting, because they're actually not sitting in the Parliament buildings or within the chamber. Opposition parties didn't heed Mkhize's call for unity and criticized the government for not making the most of the lockdown in preparing for the peak. Now, once we get into the details of this, you'll see that this is politics starting to play out. And I told you before in the videos, many of the videos that I've done, especially with regards to the decisions around dropping the levels of lockdown, that politics is going to start playing a role. And it's going to be less about the people's health or actually caring for the people. Whether right or wrong is irrelevant. It's about their intentions, and this is what I want to highlight to you. As a grim-faced Health Minister, Zweli Mkhize warned that the storm of COVID-19 infections is about to hit. Opposition parties complained that he didn't batten down the hatches during the lockdown. Honourable members, we have now reached a surge, Mkhize said. The storm that we have consistently warned South Africans about is now arriving. Now, this storm has been arriving since March, and we've all been waiting. And it's kind of like a cry wolf situation. You know, people initially might jump on the bandwagon, but after a month or two, this started dying down. And in the third month, it just became a complete dog show where everyone's just attacking government. And this is the typical sheepish behavior. And I actually want each of you to reflect on yourself and how you behave during this time, and reflect on why you behave that way, so that you can change the way that you think and the way that you behave in future, because we all need to do that. This is very important. And we actually need to do things based on fact, not based on mainstream media. And you have a right to demand those facts from government. And there's many ways that you can actually do that. Mkhize said this as he delivered a ministerial statement to the National Assembly on Wednesday afternoon. I quote, this is still Mkhize speaking, "As a nation, we have every reason to be united in this fight against COVID-19. We dare not be divided. As government, we have said we cannot fight this COVID-19 enemy alone. We need all political parties, social partners, and every citizen to come on board." Well, is 100% correct. If people don't back government, government is pointless. So this is how you get rid of them. You just ignore them. Don't do what they say. And they aren't governing anymore, because we are the government. They are not the government. We elect them into power, we can remove them from power, we can do it within a day. It doesn't have to take long to remove the entire government. We can all, like I've said before, rock up in front of Parliament or the union buildings and just demand that they step down. And they will. If there's enough people, they will step down. They can all resign and we can come up with a new system. So it's all up to us to actually build up the unity to remove this government. It's that simple. However, opposition parties didn't heed his call for unity. DA MP Sifiwe Gwarube introduced an urgent debate on the coronavirus on the 5th of March. The same day, Mkhize announced South Africa's first confirmed case. She said on Wednesday that on that day she pledged the DA's conditional support to the government's efforts to fight the pandemic. Okay? There you have it. Unconditional support. No questions asked. None of what I've just said to you, you should do when you're faced with something like this, where you absolutely want to annihilate people's lifestyle, where you want to annihilate people's businesses, when you want to annihilate their entire life's work. You know? We would just support you unconditionally. That's what happened. She said on Wednesday that on that day she pledged the DA's support to the government. Okay? We vow to stand by you as long as you place the well-being of the people of South Africa first. That was the condition, she said. That's such a broad statement. Anyone can say that and then judge afterwards. If they were in government, what would have been different? They would have still listened to the World Health Organization because they're currently doing exactly that. And I can prove that from the Western Cape. Then she said, you have let them down and we have withdrawn our support. So now the DA is saying they don't support government anymore. When they supported them first, TNAs stood behind Cyril Ramaphosa when the lockdown was announced, and again when the extension of the lockdown was announced, he stood behind Ramaphosa again, with all the other opposition leaders, okay? Now they're retracting their support. The social contract that the South African public signed with its government was clear. They agreed to stay at home at the expense of their life's work and livelihoods, and government would build health system capacity. That contract has been breached. She's not speaking for us. No, she's wrong. She's wrong when she thinks she's speaking for the majority of people. She's not. Most people weren't happy to stay at home. In fact, many people didn't adhere to the lockdown conditions at all. They didn't want to and just didn't. Especially in the informal settlements. I mean, I drove through there. The people ignored it. And they have a right to do that. Like I said in my other video, that laws are meant to be broken. And none of the regulations are laws. None of them. She said the government failed spectacularly to build healthcare capacity. Now she's going on to hospital, something that you can't just build overnight. Among her recommendations to the government is to place the Eastern Cape Department of Health under administration. EFF MP Ompile Moatwe questioned the quality of leadership at the helm and predicted that when the storm hits, there will be death and carnage of apocalyptic proportions. This is the EFF statement. So these opposition parties are going into election mode now because there's a local government election coming up next year, and they are just going to take out the daggers and stab the same people that they supported in the back. That's what they're doing right now. And I will not be convinced by their buffoonery, because that's exactly what it is. Shortly after she accused President Cyril Ramaphosa and Mkhize of using Trumpian logic in opening the economy, the parliamentary feed of the virtual sitting was cut. When it was restored, she was allowed to repeat her speech. I quote, South Africa will be a case study of how not to manage a pandemic. Close quote, she said. This is the lady from the EFF. From the EFF. So what they are saying is that things are going to get much worse. The lockdown shouldn't have been opened up. The EFF is basically saying that the economy should have been ruined completely, and we know that that is basically what they're out to do. And that's basically what all the parties are out to do, is absolutely ruin the country completely, because that is what the evidence before us says. They are all in cahoots in this coronavirus pandemic and the situation that's been created for all of us right now. Freedom Front Plus MP Philip van Staden said during level 5 of the lockdown, South Africans granted the government time. He's speaking for us. Why is he speaking for us? He cannot speak for us. He says South Africans granted the government something. Is he freaking mad? I granted nobody anything. Nobody. He says they granted government time to prepare the public health sector, but it is not ready for what is to come. I just want to explain how psychotic these people are, that the people sitting in parliament don't actually think, what do the people on the ground feel like? Do they actually agree with what we're doing? They don't think that. They believe they have the right to make decisions for us that kills our livelihood. They have no right to make that decision. Under our Constitution and the Disaster Management Act, they have zero right to make that decision for us. None. None whatsoever. The Constitution doesn't allow it. But they claim that they are speaking for the people. Psychotic. These people are psychotic. All of them. They all need to be removed, and very soon. The sooner the better. We've reached a stage where South Africans won't die of COVID-19 alone, but also of starvation, he said. Well, now he mentions that. Does he think that someone can go without food for 90 days? What does he think? You should rather shut up, because, you know, the more you speak, the more you dig the hole that you've put yourself in. Mistake. ACDP MP Maurice Soekers said the health system can't be the sole defense against a pandemic, and a critical mistake was to focus on the governmental interventions instead of communities. UDM MP Hunkabayomzi Kwangsa said his party's concern has always been that the government missed an opportunity to put in place proper testing capacity during level 5, even level 4 of the lockdown. It's easy to say these things. There's no substance to it. Nothing. NFP MP Mansour Sheikh Amam said he is disappointed with the way the government is dealing with the pandemic. And I quote, "It appears currently that lives do not matter," close quote, he said. Empty words. Empty. He then turned to the DA and said, I quote, "What have you done in the Western Cape to keep the numbers low?" Question mark, close quote. He asked amid grumbles from the few DA MPs in the House. I quote again, "You are looking for faults instead of saying, we too haven't done enough." And he's 100% right, because it's not just the ANC that governs everywhere. The DA is also in government in many places. You can say exactly the same of them. Problems, and then they start behaving like kids, you know, in Parliament. They can't be adults. ANC MP and chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Health, Sibongesini Dlomo, also had a go at the DA-run Western Cape. Like typical children, you know, this is like a brawl inside a creche. Responding to Gwarube's call to place the Eastern Cape Health Department under administration, he said, and I quote, "The problems we find in the Eastern Cape were transported from the Western Cape," close quote. Okay, kid brawl ensuing. He said the system collapsed and Gwarube shouldn't talk about the Eastern Cape only. Even though the debate wasn't smooth sailing, Mkhize reiterated his earlier call of all hands on deck in his concluding response. And I quote, "More than dividing us, the fight against COVID-19 should unite us," close quote, he said. Open quote again. "In this fight, there is no one person who possesses a monopoly on wisdom," close quote. He said there were some weaknesses in the Western Cape, but they had worked together with the national government to address it. I quote again, "It is not right for anybody to single out the Western Cape," close quote. So Mkhize is saying here that they've been working with the Western Cape, and he is basically throwing an olive branch to the DA and saying, if you don't attack us, we're not going to attack you. And they have all failed us, the people of the country, because what they should have done to begin with is tell us why we should ruin our lives and our businesses. They have not done this. They have not done this to this very day. They have not given us that detail. We've had to find it. People have gone and looked in social media, on TV screens, and we've had to believe these people. The government officials have given us nothing. And this is really sad. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said many things in his speeches that lack substance completely. And I just want to make clear that we're going to see blood on the floor within Parliament, the virtual Parliament. People are going to start fighting like kids. and they're going to look at the political landscape and see how they can win over the public more votes so that they can have more power while they are still there as members of parliament that have been elected by a party, because we haven't elected them. And their time is coming to an end soon. They know this. They have 23 months left to come up with a new electoral system. They have all been elected fraudulently because the IEC Electoral Act has been declared unconstitutional. They are all a bunch of sitting traitors. That's how I see them. After that Concord judgment, they should have all gotten up and resigned and said, let's come up with a new system, and then I would respect them. If they would hand over their power and their positions and say, let's come up with a new system, get a working group together to put a new system together where people can be elected independently, that would be a good starting point. A starting point only. But they haven't done that. They want to cling to power for as long as possible and to their fat salaries for as long as possible. And for this, they will start annihilating each other in parliament now, and the dog show or the crash fight will continue. And I'll keep you updated with regards to that as this develops. Remember, these people are funded by New World Order agencies to implement their policies, and I will do very specific videos still, especially on the transgender act that is being forced on the schools within the Western Cape. It's being gazetted already, and I will deal with that gazette in detail. I've dealt with it before, but I'll go into detail so that you can actually see what they are proposing for the schools. They will be training all the principals. This is the DA-run Western Cape, where soon in future a boy will be able to compete against your girl in athletics. Please continue subscribing to the channel for those of you that enjoy the content. Click the bell icon to receive notifications for new videos. Many of you don't get the notifications, and then you actually miss out on a lot of the content. Also, go please and watch the Question Everything series as well as the Moments in Time series. You can find that in a playlist on the channel. So do go and visit the channel. Read the About Us for those of you that are new, so that you can see what this channel is about. I thank you very much. Till the next video.